Hello, listeners of Siouxland Catholic Radio, channel 88.1 FM, KFHC Ponca Sioux City, and KOIA Storm Lake. I am so pleased that you're taking time out of your busy schedules to listen to this show, Faith in Action. I'm the host, Joanne Fox, and maybe it is 9 a.m. on a Monday morning, or maybe it's a 7 p.m. on a Saturday night. Or maybe you're listening to us on a number of podcasting platforms, including Spotify, or maybe you went directly to our website at SiouxlandCatholicRadio.com and clicked on my picture, and so you're listening that way. But whatever way that you and I are connecting at this moment, again, I am so grateful. It means the world to us that you are supporting us, as is our sponsor of this show, which is Mary's Choice, a Sioux City Pregnancy Resource Center, and they have been just wonderful in supporting us, and again, so grateful. So, you know, this show pretty much is all about me and people I bring in who are either a friend or a new BFF. And so in the studio with me, I have Dr. Julie Lohr, and she is associated with the Fire Foundation of Northwest Iowa. And I got to tell you, listeners, this group is on fire. Oh, sorry for the pun. And they assist children with special needs with the opportunity for inclusive education in the Catholic schools they attend in Northwest Iowa. So why am I having Dr. Lohr on at this time? Well, there's a reason. Because the nonprofit is hosting its third annual Fire and Flights fundraiser. Say that fast 3 times. Fire and Flights fundraiser. It is going to be on September 6th at Mardo Brewing Company in Sioux City. If at this moment you did not have a pen, pencil, piece of paper, or your phone to put it in your calendar, I will repeat that several times during this program. So, again, I want to welcome to the studio Dr. Julie Lohr, and she is associated with the Fire Foundation. So thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule, Julie, to join me here and share with the listeners all the good stuff that's going on with the Fire Foundation.
Well, thank you so much, Joanne. I'm thrilled to be here, and I appreciate this opportunity to talk with you.
Absolutely. But first, I think the listeners are thinking to themselves, but who is this woman? I'm not sure I know her. So why don't you tell the listeners a little bit about yourself, where you grew up, where you went to school, and other appropriate, informative information.
Sure. Well, I am a Sioux City native. I was born here and lived here for most of my life. I am married to my husband, Chris. This summer, we celebrate 20 years of marriage. Chris is also a Sioux City native, and we met and fell in love at Bishop Heelan. We both graduated from Briarcliff University, and so we have a lot of pride in the Siouxland area. My husband and I have 4 children. Jack is going to be a sophomore at Heelan, and he is 15. Savannah is 13, and Landon is 10, and Charlotte is 8, and they all attend Sacred Heart. We're members of Holy Cross Parish, and we love our parish. We love Father Peter and Father Heeman. And I am a dentist here in Sioux City. I own my own practice, and it's quite a journey, quite an experience to learn how to be a business owner. Over the last 11 years, my practice has had so much support from the Siouxland community, and we are growing and thriving, and I'm so grateful for that.
I imagine so.
Yes.
And congratulations on the 20 years of marriage. That's no easy task in today's world either.
Thank you. My marriage is such a blessing to me. My husband is a wonderful support, not only for the practice and for our family, but also for the Fire Foundation.
Absolutely. And I'm sure the listeners, if they didn't pull out a laptop or their phone and started to Google Fire Foundation of Northwest Iowa, would be interested in knowing a little bit of the background of the Fire Foundation and how it came into being. So maybe you could tell the listeners a little bit about that.
Certainly. The Fire Foundation came to be because there were some close-knit families with children who have a disability and either could not attend the Catholic school or maybe were too young even to attend Catholic school yet. And these families kind of leaned on each other. And we got a little organized, and we created kind of a family support group, Catholic families with children with a disability. And we often spoke about how much we wanted our children to stay united and to be able to attend the same Catholic school as their siblings. And this group grew to become a little bit more organized. We developed a name for our group, and we created a Facebook page, and we met on a regular basis to kind of brainstorm solutions that sometimes had to do with Catholic education, but sometimes not. Eventually, we got to a point where we said, you know, if we're really going to make a change here, and if we're really going to make a difference, we need to determine our goals and set action steps to fulfill these goals. And we started doing a lot of research on how other communities developed opportunities for inclusive Catholic education. And we learned about the Fire Foundation, the flagship affiliate out of Kansas City. And we studied what they did and their success. And we determined that we could become an affiliate here in Northwest Iowa. And we just took steps to say, well, this is what we need to do to create our own nonprofit. And we don't have to reinvent the wheel, but we also don't have to mimic what other affiliates have done precisely. We can figure out what works for us here in Northwest Iowa. And we started talking to people, and we started really getting the ball rolling in terms of securing a little bit of legal advice, a little bit of financial advice, and creating bank accounts and getting our nonprofit status and our tax ID and all those things. And later moved our way towards creation of a board of directors and got a website and social media pages. And now we're just kind of exploding. Like you said, we're on fire, right?
Right.
We have done so much good work in the last 2.5 years, and we have incredible momentum, and we're very, very excited at the possibilities for the future.
And you mentioned, of course, one of the things as you strive to initiate a nonprofit that you need a board of directors, and I know you're the vice president, but tell the listeners who the other executive officers are and a little bit about them, just a little bit.
Certainly. Dr. Ryan Allen is our president of the Fire Foundation Board of Directors. He is a father of 3 children, and he has 2 sons, and his daughter Sawyer has Down syndrome. And he and his wife Megan have just been instrumental in the creation of the Fire Foundation of Northwest Iowa. And Ryan has just been incredibly dedicated, passionate, and quite driven. He really leads our group with courage and integrity, and we wouldn't be here without him. So he is our president, and then.
And I believe he is associated with Briarcliff University, if I remember correctly.
Well, he was, and
Okay.
he worked at Briarcliff for a number of years in the English department.
Okay.
But I think at this time, he not only has his own business, he and his wife run Lumen Therapy, but my understanding is that he's also teaching at USD.
Okay.
And I forgive me if I'm wrong on that detail. But he's a coach and a father, and he's very active in the parish, and so we're grateful to him.
All right. And again, you know, being in the media, I kind of remember bits and pieces of hearing his name. And so I thought, well, I might as well ask.
Sure.
And then you obviously also have a secretary and or treasurer.
Yes. So Dr. Jada Kurth is a local Sioux City dentist and a mother of 4, and she is our secretary. Jada has been blessed with an incredible talent of organization. She's pretty darn tech savvy, and she has been fantastic for our group. So she serves as our secretary. And then Tim Funk, a local CPA and business owner himself, is our treasurer. And he keeps us moving in the right direction financially, and we're just so grateful to both of them for their service.
Absolutely. And maybe, Julie, you could tell the listeners a little bit about how you became involved. Especially, you mentioned Dr. Allen has a child with Down syndrome,
Yes.
and you have a child that has some challenges as well. And maybe if you could share with the listeners a little bit about Jack.
Absolutely. So when Jack was born a healthy infant, and when he was 7.5 months old, he sustained a terrible head injury. So it was incredibly traumatic, very unexpected, a blindsiding moment in a parent's life. My husband and I were very young, and Jack actually, he almost passed away. He had life-saving neurosurgery in order to relieve the pressure on his head from a blunt force trauma to his head from our babysitter. So it was just the most horrific thing that you read about happening to other people, but you never think it could happen to your own child. And so we leaned on our faith, and we really just came together as a couple, as a husband and a wife, and we leaned on the amazing medical professionals at the University of Iowa hospitals and clinics to save our son. So he has been through a lot, multiple skull surgeries, brain surgery to help with draining fluid, and he's had 2 eye surgeries, skull reconstruction, PT, OT, speech therapy, you name it. The child has been through equestrian therapy, pool therapy, the works. So he's our miracle, and he brings joy to everyone. If you have not yet met Jack Lohr, you're missing out, because his smile lights up the room, and he's just a really cool kid who has quite a purpose to fulfill in life.
Coincidentally, we have met Jack Lohr, because last year when we did Vacation Bible School, he was in the trenches, as I would say, and very helpful, very delightful. So we have met Jack. But what kinds of challenges was he having in the classroom? I mean, I understand with a Down syndrome child,
yes,
there's some real cognitive stuff going on there. But what about Jack? What kind of challenges was he having?
Yes. So what Jack has residual from everything that he went through are residual motor and cognitive deficits. So the motor deficit affects his ability to do 2-handed activities in the classroom. So if you think about it, when your child is young, they're learning how to cut paper with scissors. How do you do that with one hand? They're learning how to open glue bottles to do art projects, to glue letters next to pictures. That was a challenge for him. So he had motor deficits, and that made some learning challenges. As you get older and you cannot type with both hands on a computer, typing with one hand is difficult and challenging. So the motor piece is kind of outlined there, but the cognitive aspect is that Jack has, a residual brain injury, which affects his ability to think, to process information, to focus. So he lags behind his peers. He's making strides, he's making gains, but he is not at grade level, and as sad as it makes me to say, he's not close to grade level. Mm-hmm. So if you talk to him socially, he blends in with other 15-year-olds pretty darn well. But if you sit down and you do reading, writing, and math, he's not where he needs to, where he could be, but he's on his own path. And we're proud of the progress he's made, but he definitely requires special education in the classroom.
Sure, and that would make total sense. And again, it plugs into, you all being on fire for this Fire Foundation. And again, listeners, if you're just tuning in, I want to remind you this show is Faith in Action, and I'm the host, Joanne Fox. And with me in the studio is Dr. Julie Lohr. She is a Siouxland dentist, longtime native of Sioux City, graduate of Siouxland, graduate of Briar Cliff. And she is the vice president of the local affiliate of the Fire Foundation in Northwest Iowa. And as she mentioned in our interview, the Fire Foundation is part of the National Fire Foundation, which it has its flagship affiliate is in Kansas City. And if you're wondering again why I have her on the program, well, it's to learn and educate you all about the Fire Foundation. But more importantly, we want to bring to your attention their fundraiser, which is the Fire and Flights fundraiser. And that is Wednesday, September 6th. It goes from 4:30 to 6:30. I hope by this time you did get a pen or paper or pencil and you pulled out your laptop or your phone and putting this in. So it goes from 4:30 to 6:30, and there are remarks at 5:30 in case, you need to work until 5. You can at least get there in time for the remarks. And it is at Marto Brewing Company. That is in Sioux City. It's at 930 4th Street. So again, I will mention that several times during the run of the show, so you just kind of, if you didn't have something to write with, then there you go. And you mentioned, a couple years this has been going on. If I recall, it was 2021 kind of when everything started to come together.
Absolutely, you're exactly right.
And then how did you kind of get the word out? You mentioned social media and just word of mouth helps a lot. And then there's cadre of individuals who share somewhat of the same challenges. So how did you go about getting the word out about the Fire Foundation of Northwest Iowa?
Certainly. We did rely on social media a little bit. Of course, we relied on each person. I mean, I do think many parents who have a child with a disability, they have their intimate circle of supporters. And then we also had some early adopters. We called them early adopters. And those are folks that maybe they weren't in our unique, tight-knit personal circle of support for our disabled child, but they were people who we knew would be very supportive of our mission. And so those were folks that we contacted and asked them to learn a little bit more about the Fire Foundation and to help us spread the word, or sometimes we say fan the flame, fan the flame of the Fire Foundation. And so we felt a quite a bit of embrace from the community, because I think there's a lot of people, whether or not you have a child with a disability, there's a lot of people in our area in Northwest Iowa who felt this is definitely something that our schools need. And when we see a need, we want to help.
Sure, and you've had a number of people step up to the plate, and I think it has to be gratifying. So about how many individuals would you say are in on this, that you serve, or somehow they indicate an interest?
Well, that's a great question. Let me think here. So when it comes to our actual board, besides our executive board, we have other wonderful, a really well-rounded, kind of impressive board. And then plus, we have several committees. So there are some folks who serve on our committees, but they're not on our board. And between, board members, committee members, plus families that we've served, I feel like we've impacted, and schools. The schools, I mean, the grant dollars that we've awarded to Bishop Heelan and to Galen Catholic Elementary and High School, I think we've had an impact. We've had an impact on a lot of people, a positive impact.
And I think initially, you had this group of individuals that were experiencing challenges with their son or daughter's education, or maybe even might have a grandma or grandpa involved in too. Did it surprise you at the level of need in this community for this challenge?
Mm-hmm. I wouldn't say it surprised me, but I think it surprised other folks.
Okay.
I think I knew the level of need because I had even talked to other folks whose children didn't get to go to Catholic school, and they shared with me, I wish. I think when pictures came out of Jack attending Catholic school, I fielded messages, a lot of messages, either on social media or on if they had my number or somehow got my number. Even some of the patients in my practice were like, I heard your son goes to Catholic school. How did that come to be? People were excited by it, and they thought, this is wonderful. We need to see more of this. So I think there were some folks who were surprised, but I think there's a lot of teachers who have taught in the Catholic school and have been dedicated to Catholic education, which I'm so eternally grateful for. We're so blessed in the Catholic schools to have so many wonderful teachers and administrators, because it is a calling. It is truly a calling. But I think a lot of those teachers and administrators have known the need for a long time, but just didn't know quite how to fulfill that need, how to make some small changes in the right direction to get to the point where they can include more children.
And I know part of the reason, that the group got together was that you mentioned the grants and awarding the grants. So maybe you could explain to the listeners a little bit about that process of the grant awarding, because I know I have followed you on social media and the stories in the Lumen, which is the official newspaper and social media aspect of the Diocese of Sioux City. So I've kind of followed what has been going on, but maybe you could explain to the listeners a little bit about the grant process.
Absolutely. So the way the Fire Foundation is set up is that we're a nonprofit organization that raises funds for inclusive Catholic education. And the way we are fiscally responsible and the way we allocate those dollars is based on a grant application process through a school that wants to become a partner school. So if a Catholic school wants to become a partner school with the Fire Foundation, they go through a formal application process, which includes an interview, and it includes some requested documentation to kind of show that the school is invested and they're making the necessary additions or changes in order to successfully educate children with disabilities. And so through that application process, there is feedback given from our grants committee, and our grants committee has done a wonderful job because we are learning as we go. We are a young organization, and the grants committee has really worked hard to modify the grant application process to fit our affiliate well. We want to be as absolutely fair as possible. And giving feedback to the schools helps them learn, we're able to award this much of what you requested. We would maybe be able to fund more if we see X, Y, or Z in the future. So, and then those schools are then held accountable in a mid-year kind of interview where we check in and say, how are things going? Are things going well? What challenges have you had? We want to support you in these challenges. Because really, the Fire Foundation understands that going from a curriculum or a model, an educational model per se, and remember, please forgive me, I'm not an educator and I'm not an administrator, so if I say something that doesn't sound quite right in terms of the terminology of education, I apologize. But we want to support them in slowly making these strides, because when you're used to educating, we sometimes say typically developing children. Mm-hmm. So if you're used to educating only typically developing children, and then suddenly you're making your way towards some changes in your model, how can you do universal design instruction? How can you move in that way? We know that's challenging. It's hard. We want to support the schools. We want to encourage them. We want to help offer solutions and continuing education opportunities so that they can not feel that the task is daunting.
Absolutely. And I think one of the most wonderful testimonials I saw was posted on Facebook under the Bishop Heelan page, in which I believe their instructor talked about how meaningful it was to be part of the curriculum and work with these young people in making sure they are successful in their educational career. So, I'm not certain, but was Heelan one of the first ones to get on board, or was it Galen or somebody else?
Yes. So I would say, both Heelan and Galen, Galen Catholic, the elementary and the high school, they all applied for a grant in our first application process. So that was wonderful. It was wonderful to see that. And some of the testimonials from the teachers and the administrators that we've obtained, Dr. Flannery and Mrs. Freilich, Mrs. Molly Ostrahansky, and Mrs. McElroy have all given us lovely testimonials on how the Fire Foundation has helped them move towards their inclusion goals. And it's incredibly gratifying. And sometimes it feels surreal, because we have come a long ways in 2.5 years, and we're just very excited.
As you well should be, because again, I've read some of the stuff about it, and it makes you smile, and then it humbles you to realize the support that is out there. But what a task that must be then to examine the grants and determine, how they should be awarded. And you said you have a committee that does that. And maybe what are some of the criteria that they look at when a school submits a grant, for example?
That's a tough question for me. I'm going to do my best to answer this. I don't serve on the grants committee. Gina Sitzman and Roz Koob are two people who serve on the grants committee, and they are very knowledgeable. They do a good job, especially Gina, who also serves on our board. of letting us know how things go and kind of keeping the board posted. I think what they're looking for is they're looking for schools and they're looking for an application that demonstrates not only the desire to include children with disabilities, but also do they have a plan? What is their plan of how they are going to use the dollars? How are they going to maximize the benefit to all students? Because that's the thing that a lot of people miss. They seem to think that inclusion only affects the child with a disability, and that is so far from the truth. In all honesty, when you have Catholic inclusion, everyone benefits. Everyone benefits. The teachers benefit, the students, all of the students benefit, administrators benefit, parents and families benefit, because the thing that occurs is other students get to observe that we all have different abilities. You know, they learn a lot about diversity of skin color. Mm-hmm. They learn about maybe diversity of thought, that people have different thoughts. Well, what about diversity of abilities? You know, when they get out into the work world, if Bishop Heelan is a place where they're not exposed to the wide range of abilities that God gives people, then they're at a disadvantage. But if they are exposed and are surrounded by folks who have different abilities, they learn compassion and they learn empathy and they learn to have gratitude for all of their five senses or their body that works well. I think they also learn patience, and they get to see the love. I mean, there is a lot of love that is demonstrated when you help. I mean, Jack has friends who open his milk carton for him. I mean, that's an act of love every day. Jack can't tie his own shoelaces, and so when he leaves the house, his shoelaces are tied, but he sometimes will have a classmate who will say, "Hey, bud, let me get your shoe for you." I mean, that's an act of love, and that's what our Catholic schools are all about. So I think that not only are teachers are sometimes challenged and they're pushed beyond what they think is their capacity, and suddenly they realize, boy, this technique that worked for Sawyer Allen or worked for Jack Lohr or worked for, and some children, they might not have a diagnosed disability, but they have a challenge with reading, or they have a math number sense. They don't have a strong sense of number sense, and so math is such a challenge for them. Once they're exposed to special education, professional development, suddenly they have these new strategies at their fingertips that might work for a child who has a disability, but holy heck, it works for every other child too. And so it makes our teachers stronger and more confident in themselves. And it makes our administrators realize that they're helping fulfill the mission of the Catholic Church. And that is a beautiful and wonderful thing. And it unifies. I really, truly think it unifies our schools when we include as many children as want and desire a Catholic education.
And of course, again, listeners, if you're just tuning in, this show is Faith in Action, and I'm the host, Joanne Fox, and we're talking with Dr. Julie Lohr, who is Vice President of the Board of the Fire Foundation of Northwest Iowa. And again, I have her on because we're going to talk about the Fire and Flights fundraiser, Wednesday, September 6th. I hope to heavens that you finally got a pen or a pencil and a piece of paper. Wednesday, September 6th. It goes from 4:30 to 6:30. It is at Marteau Brewing Company in Sioux City. That's in downtown Sioux City. And, this has been just so informative, but it takes money. Mm-hmm. And I think that's why you have this fundraiser coming up. So I think the listeners would be curious to know why you went with this type of fundraiser instead of maybe a dinner or a speaker or a dance, which I would go to. Mm-hmm. But why this type of fundraiser?
Well, I think originally what we wanted to do was host an intimate, our inaugural event. We wanted it to feel intimate. We wanted it to feel informative, and we wanted to get the word out there about what the Fire Foundation was all about. It was wonderful, and so we want to continue this event. We like the fact that it is a little more casual. a lot of parents, I mean, really, all of us, we're all busy, right? Lives are kind of chaotic and busy, and we want to have an event where people can swing by after work, have a yummy bite to eat. Mardos has been so supportive of us. Have a cocktail and kind of just relax, or not a cocktail, a nice brewed beer, I should say.
We'll just limit it to adult beverage.
Have an adult beverage and have an opportunity to support a really wonderful mission of helping our children obtain a Catholic education. I do think that Mardos, the environment and the atmosphere of Mardos, has allowed us to have good speakers. Grace Nelson, who just graduated from Bishop Heelan, she did such a wonderful job last year in her speech. It was incredibly powerful. And so we're able to share information, but we're also able to laugh and have a good time. And anyone who feels so moved to write us a generous check, boy, that is so appreciated. And we just want to continue to have this event. We'll likely have this event every year, but we are looking at other events too. Our board has been kind of diving deeper into some various options. I think the time of year is a nice time of year to snag people before things get too busy in the school year.
Sure, absolutely. And I know the first one was very well received. How surprised were you at the response to that first Fire Foundation Flights fundraiser?
We were very pleased. I think our group is realistic. We set realistic goals, and they're realistic, but yet they're ambitious. And so we continue to feel the support of the community, and we are seeking more support from the Lamar's community at this time in terms of some participation on our board, and we're hoping to make more contacts in the Lamar's community as well. Eventually, the Fire Foundation of Northwest Iowa seeks to branch out into other communities in Northwest Iowa as well, and we're baby stepping our way towards that.
Can you cross the river? St. Michael's Catholic School in South Sioux City, Nebraska. Again, I'm not sure about boundaries. We often face these kinds of things, with that river is good on the one hand, but it can cause a challenge on the other hand.
Right. And so that's a very good question. My answer would say, unfortunately, no, because we are the Fire Foundation of Northwest Iowa, and the way the affiliate structure is set up, it doesn't really allow us to do that. Now, if Nebraska, to my knowledge, Nebraska does not have their own affiliate, but that is a process where if someone in the South Sioux City area needs help and support to create their own affiliate and needs a contact information, someone to contact, by all means, they could contact me, and I'd be happy to help them in any way I could get that started. But there are multiple affiliates across the United States of America. There's one in Denver, New Hampshire, Chicago, Indiana, Illinois. There's multiple affiliates, and so it's inspiring.
Yes, and it can be done because, look, it was done here in Northwest Iowa with literally a group of volunteers, because it's my understanding you have no paid staff.
No paid staff. Hashtag future goals.
Yes.
And so if there's anyone listening right now that thinks, boy, I feel a little unfulfilled in my life right now, and I have additional time on my hands, and I have these skills that I could donate to the Fire Foundation, boy, oh boy, please reach out to me, because we will put you to work, and we will appreciate you.
Yeah, and as I've said often on this program, listeners, this show is all about me. So I often talk about my own personal experiences, and my youngest son started in Catholic schools in Sacred Heart. All my boys went through Sacred Heart. And then we moved almost to Hinton. And at that time, they were maxed out at St. Michael's Grade School in Leeds. And so I enrolled him in Hinton. And he had some challenges with English and math. And so he was part of the resource room in Hinton. But the older three brothers all graduated from Heelan. So when it came time for him to go to Heelan, he was excited, and he said, yes, I'd really like to go. I had some misgivings, but I thought, okay, because he was in a resource room in Hinton for the challenges with the math and English. Enrolled him in Heelan. They had a study hall teacher that should have worked with him and tried, but his challenges were much greater and literally almost failed every single class at Heelan. And that is I'm not going to throw Heelan under the bus at all, but his challenges were greater than anything they had at that moment. And now he's been out of school for many, many, many years because he's a young adult now. So he goes back to Hinton, and I offer in my prayers the woman who is in charge of the resource room, because she worked with him and he was able to graduate with his class.
Good.
And he did go to some summer school stuff. And now, it's a shrug of the shoulders because he has his own trucking company and he's doing very well.
Good.
But that was a heartbreak that year that he was in school and just could not succeed. And it was just that the resources weren't there. And that's why your group resonates with me so much, because I see the great things that are happening and wish they had been for my son years and years ago, almost 20 now, but they weren't. And that was just what was going on at that time. And again, because Hinton was so involved with the area education agency, Northwest Iowa Area Education Agency, that's a mouthful too, then he was able to succeed because they pulled from those resources. And that's why I applaud you, Julie, and all of the individuals associated with the Fire Foundation of Northwest Iowa, that you are making this happen for individuals who have these challenges.
Thank you. Thank you.
So I just made my youngest son famous. I'm sure he will hear about that. But, it is what it is. So what do you hope will happen at this year's Fire Foundation Flights fundraiser?
Well, I think that we would like to exceed what we were able to raise last year. We would like to see some new faces, we'd like to see the same faces from last year plus new faces. We would like to promote a little bit more comprehensively the event than we did last year. And so we just hope to have another successful and powerful event where people are inspired to support our group and support our children.
And then in the future, I imagine one of the goals of the Fire Foundation is to become involved maybe in another regional Northwest Iowa school. And of course, the Diocese of Sioux City has several that I would imagine would qualify.
Yes, that is definitely the goal. We have made strides, and Patty Lansink at the Diocese has been very supportive, as has Kelly Cahoot, of what we're trying to accomplish with the Fire Foundation. We're very grateful for these hardworking women. To our knowledge, some of the areas that we may be able to help haven't had as great of a need as the Lamars and Sioux City community. And I'll tell you why. Smaller school districts in Northwest Iowa tend to have better relationships with their public school districts. So their public school districts are more willing to say, you have a student who needs this? Well, we will help you, and this is how it's going to work out. And it doesn't lead to the student suffering. And so what we have found is that their need is maybe not as great as Lamars and Sioux City. Lamars and Sioux City has some challenges with the relationship between the non-public school and the public school district.
And I think just the population in Sioux City and Lamars, those are huge. I mean, they're much bigger than the other schools. I'm not even going to try and remember all of them, but when you think about Carroll Kemper, Fort Dodge St. Edmund, Algona Garrigan, Remsen St. Mary's, Storm Lake St. Mary's, those are smaller communities. So you made a great point there, Julie, about when you have the smaller communities, the interaction between the schools is much greater. And I apologize, I know I left off several of our schools, but those came to mind immediately.
Sure.
And I'm so glad you mentioned Patty Lansink, who is the superintendent of Catholic schools for the Diocese of Sioux City. We've had her on the show several times talking about this, that, and the other thing, and she is a tremendous resource, as is Kelly Cahoot, who I believe is the assistant superintendent. And yeah, as you said, these are dynamic women, and boy, they're in there with both feet in the trenches, making sure our students are prepared for stepping away from the academic atmosphere, becoming productive citizens, and hopefully faith-filled Catholics.
Yes, absolutely.
So, and again, listeners, I want to remind you this event that is coming up. It is the Fire Foundation of Northwest Iowa Fire and Flights fundraiser. And flights has nothing to do with getting on a plane. The flights does have to do with where this event is happening, and that's Mardo Brewing Company. That address is 930 4th Street. It is in the historic area of Sioux City. So Wednesday, September 6th, the time is 4:30 to 6:30 p.m. You can go to the Fire Foundation's website, which is pretty straightforward, firefoundationnwiowa.org. So it's Fire Foundation of Northwest Iowa.org, but firefoundationnwiowa.org. Or you can email them at ignite@firefoundationnwiowa.org. And all of this stuff comes up on the website when you go to the Fire Foundation. And we've discovered our listeners are very savvy. They know how to Google.
Wonderful.
And so they can find this stuff. I will just add that if you need to call somebody, because some people just love to talk to another human being.
Sure.
The number is 712, obviously, Northwest Iowa phone number, Sioux City number, 454-4139. Again, 454-4139. Someone will answer. If they don't answer, it'll go to voicemail, and you can leave a message with questions or concerns, or maybe you would just like more information on the Fire Foundation of Northwest Iowa, or specifically this event. So I want to thank my guest in the studio, Dr. Julie Lohr, who is Vice President of the Board of the Fire Foundation of Northwest Iowa. Thank you so much. I know you're a busy woman. You took time out of your busy schedule to come on down to the station and share with the listeners how much this group and you are on fire for the Fire Foundation and our young people.
Thank you so much, Joanne. This was a great experience. I enjoyed it immensely, and the time flew by. Thank you for having me, and I appreciate Siouxland Catholic Radio very much.
And we do as well. And we're hoping Jack will return for Vacation Bible School, because he was a wonderful asset, and we had so much fun with him. So he is a delightful young man, Mom. You should be very proud.
Thank you. Thank you.
So that wraps up another edition of Faith in Action. It is brought to you by Mary's Choice, which is a Sioux City Pregnancy Resource Center. Say that 5 times fast as well. And you can find previous Faith in Action shows at SiouxlandCatholicRadio.com, on Spotify, and on a number of other podcasting platforms. So, on behalf of myself, I'm Joanne Fox, and I'm the host of this show, and my executive producer, Ann Reed. I want to remind you that a faithful reaction is good, but faith in action, so much better. Thanks for listening, and God bless.